we've got it all. We've got a nice southwest exposure. We have ample water resource, but not in the form of precipitation during the growing period. It's windy, it's hot. We have a lot of ripening potential.
So for a change of pace, I am in Yakima Valley here in Washington State, and I am with J.J. Williams, and he's the general manager at Kiona Vineyards and Winery. Did I get through that right?
It sounded great to me, Ray. Thank you.
Good, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited for our interview, and I'm glad you're spending time in Washington.
Oh, I love it here. I'm just going to start off with the tasting room. Wow, this is totally unique.
Yeah, thank you very much. My grandparents and my parents worked for a long time to build a new tasting room, and I think they did a good job. It was important for them to view it from the guest experience backwards. So we're perched above our estate vineyard, so you can sit out on the deck and get a panoramic vista of not only Red Mountain and the Yakima Valley, but obviously our estate vineyard as well. And we can point out and say, hey, you know, that wine you're drinking right now is from that block right there. And that's a unique experience here in Washington, at least. We are an estate-grown and bottled winery here at Kiona.
And how many acres is Kiona?
Yeah, so we have 5 estate vineyards, all here on the Red Mountain AVA. And if you totaled up all of the acres under vine, it's 272.3. Got to get the decimal in there.
I get that, but that's still a lot of acreage to manage.
It is, yeah. So we have a unique structure in the Pacific Northwest in that we are a vineyard operation that happens to run a nationally distributed winery, as opposed to a lot of other wineries are winery operations that if they have a vineyard, the vineyard is kind of subservient to the winery. So we are a farm that runs a winery.
I guess that's fairly unique around here then.
It is, yeah, and we're actually growing wine grapes for about 60 other top Pacific Northwest wineries.
I was going to ask that, yeah.
Yeah, so if you've had a bottle of Red Mountain wine, you might want to check the back label because we might be the farmer. Red Mountain is a very small area. The entire AVA encompasses 4,040 acres, and about 3/4 of that is planted. So there's a little bit of a supply constraint.
Yeah, I would imagine.
You know, Ray, you visited here, you look out the window, it's very agrarian, right? So there's not, people don't stumble upon Red Mountain. You have to come here with intentionality.
Right.
And what's cool about growing wine grapes for all these other wineries is that Red Mountain kind of belongs to all of Washington. If you go wine tasting in Walla Walla, for example, you can drink and buy Red Mountain appellated wines. Same is true in Leavenworth or Chelan or Woodinville, so on and so forth. The grapes are grown here, but they are enjoyed, consumed, vinified all over the Pacific Northwest.
And of course, Red Mountain, to those wine lovers, it's very, very well known and very desired grapes.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little biased.
A little bit. That's okay.
Yeah, you know, Red Mountain has developed a reputation over the last 50 years as being a preeminent growing region for Cabernet, a world-class growing region for red wine cultivars, Cabernet Sauvignon chief among them, and that reflects in our own acreage at Kiona. So we have those 272 acres, like we said, but about 60% of what we grow, 60%, is Cabernet Sauvignon. Merlot is our second most planted variety, and it is 8% of what we grow. You won't find me speak ill of Merlot. It is one of our favorite grapes. But Cabernet, you know, to put it bluntly, is what pays the bills at Kiona.
Well, let's talk history here, because you were talking about your grandparents a little while ago. How did this come to be here?
Yeah, so Kiona planted the first vineyard on what would become the Red Mountain AVA. And that was in 1975. So here we are in 2025, looking back on 50 years of history.
Yeah, right.
My grandparents, John and Ann Williams, along with their friends, Jim and Pat Holmes, bought this land. It was completely undeveloped. There was no power, There were no roads. There was no water. So it was really virgin desert. And they had the moxie and the gumption and the foresight to decide to plant a vineyard in what was the middle of nowhere at the time. And some people might argue we're still in the middle of nowhere. But you know, that great risk paid off. So they started in 1975 with equal plantings of Riesling, Chardonnay, and Cabernet. The irony, of course, is that in 1975, Riesling and Chardonnay were kind of the prudent things to plant. In the Pacific Northwest, in our fledgling wine industry, white wine was the commercial superstar, and people weren't really drinking or making red wine at the time. So the fact that they dedicated 1/3 of what was a pretty wild investment to Cabernet Sauvignon, which was, again, there wasn't a lot of demand for Washington State Cabernet at the time. And here we are, 50 years later. Cabernet Sauvignon is the definitive grape of Red Mountain, and Red Mountain is mentioned in the same sentence as Bordeaux and Napa and the Margaret River Valley as, one of the best places in the world for Cabernet Sauvignon.
Let's go back to when they planted here. This wasn't arbitrary. You don't just up and, hey, let's go ahead and plant some grapes over there. I mean, what led to them to take this gigantous risk?
Right. So between the two families, the Holmeses and the Williamses, there were 7 kids, high school age or younger, at home. And they were, both Jim and John, my grandfather, were material scientists. So they weren't destitute, but they weren't independently wealthy. And they had these science-oriented day jobs and wanted to have an investment. And so originally their investment was to farm alfalfa. And you know how when someone goes to Vegas and you ask them how they did and they say, yeah, I about broke even. Well, that's what my grandpa says about their alfalfa investment. So I'm not totally sure that that's the case, but that's the story. They got interested in wine because Jim was from Vallejo, California, and my grandpa was from Missouri. So they kind of taught each other about wine and beer respectively. And an interest in drinking wine became an interest in growing wine. And there was the Washington State University was conducting a field trial to determine the commercial viability of growing Vitis vinifera in Washington. And that was conducted at the Prosser Extension by Dr. Walter Klor. And believe it or not, in the late 60s in this area, the Venn diagram overlap of people that are interested in farming and that are adherent to the scientific method is a very small overlap, a vanishingly small number of people. And they, John and Jim, decided to work for and work with the horticultural extension out there and kind of cut their viticultural teeth running those research test vineyards out near Prosser. And from that experience decided, yes, this could work. And yes, I think we can do it. And now we just have to find a good spot. And so to get back to your original question, Red Mountain checks all of the boxes. You know, if you open up the wine Bible and it says, well, here are the things you need for a nice grape growing region, we've got it all. We've got a nice southwest exposure. We have ample water resource, but not in the form of precipitation during the growing period. It's windy, it's hot. We have a lot of ripening potential. People think of Washington State, and what comes to mind is forests and bald eagles and volcanoes and rain. And here in eastern Washington, it's a desert.
Totally different, yes.
Yeah. So to put a number on that, here at the Kiona Estate Vineyard, we average about 6 inches of annual precipitation per year. It's very dry. And you couple that with this idea that within 10 miles of the way the bird flies from where we are sitting right now, we have the convergence of the Snake River, which originates in Yellowstone, the Columbia River, which originates in Canada, and the Yakima River, which originates in the Central Cascades. And so we have this unique combination of low annual precipitation, but ample water resource. In most places on Earth, those things are mutually exclusive.
So, JJ, for you are one of those people that grew up in a winemaking family. Obviously, you grew up here. I assume you lived here.
I did, yeah. So my brother and I grew up here on Red Mountain. You could take about 10 steps out our front door and be in Vines. And Sunset Road wasn't paved when we were kids, so we lived out in the sticks. I'll give you a little anecdote. So today in 2025, Benton City, which is the town that we went to school, in 2025, Benton City is a town without a stoplight. Okay?
Okay.
So 25 years ago, when Tyler and I were in school, we would get made fun of by the kids who live in a town without a stoplight for living out in the sticks. Wow. And now we have people visiting from all around the world, podcasters flying in to interview, and just to learn what's going on Red Mountain. Just kind of an irony there. But, the school bus wouldn't come up the road, the gravel road, so we had to get dropped off at the end of the road and then walk back at the end of the school day. And normally we'd make a pit stop here at Grandma's house because she kept better cereal than my parents did. So she would sugar us up before we got home.
Growing up at a time, as you say, where things were challenging, no roads, lights, and all that sort of stuff, that's something you hear from somebody who was raised in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, well, we had kind of an idyllic American childhood, I think, where Mom would kick us out, and she had a literal triangle dangling off the front of the stoop, and we would go spend all day outside and run around and build jumps and all that good stuff. And then when we were older, our folks made it clear that we had to work on the farm. Sure. And I'm sure that we were top employees. I say that with sarcasm, of course. Yeah. But they wanted to make sure that we did all the jobs that there were to do. So whether that was picking weeds or training grapes or planting grapes or working on the bottling line, they wanted to make sure that we had that experience. There was no expectation necessarily that we would make working in the winery and in the vineyard our career. But the expectation was that while we were living at home, that we worked and participated. And if we were to come back and make working at Kiona our career, then we had to become uniquely qualified to do so. So I went to business school, and my brother, who's the winemaker, went on a 10-year winemaking apprenticeship journey, basically, and culminated that with a master's in wine science. So we couldn't mosey in because we had the right last name, in our early 20s and just say, hey, we're here to run this place. They made sure, our parents made sure that we earned it and that we knew how to drive forklift and do all the stuff that you have to do to run a winery.
To visit this beautiful tasting room, can people just come by here? Do they need to make an appointment? How's it work here?
Yeah, so we are open every day, noon to 5. No reservations are required, although you can make a resi on our website. We appreciate that because it helps us staff and know how much food to make for that day. We do also have an awesome itinerary builder. I think this is maybe an industry first, so you can go to our website. As we mentioned earlier, the Tri-Cities is not a place that you visit accidentally, right? So if you're sitting on a computer in New York and planning your wine country getaway, it can be difficult to kind of figure out where to go and what to see and what to eat when you're visiting the greater Red Mountain area. So what we've done at Kiona is we've put together an itinerary builder where you can put in your cell phone number, and then we break all of these attractions down by category. So we tell you where to go taste wine, and we tell you where to go eat food, and we tell you where to stay, and then we tell you what to do that's not wine tasting. Mm-hmm. Nice. And then so you click on those things and you add them to your itinerary, and then it texts you your itinerary. Yeah, and what's cool about that is it's a little self-serving. We like to think of ourselves perhaps as altruistic, but there is an ulterior motive here in that the wineries that we are sending people to are wineries that buy Kiona fruit. And the restaurants that we're sending people to are restaurants that carry Kiona wine.
Sure, which is fair.
Yeah, so on and so forth. So we want to make it real easy to make a plan and then send it to your friends and really get excited and come with some intentionality.
And for our listeners who'd like to learn about you online, what is that website?
KionaWine.com. Also, if you want to, I paid for this domain, so we may as well use it. Kiona.wine, because we're real hip.
JJ, thanks very much for having me in here to see this really spectacular tasting room. And I hope you guys keep on going for a number of other generations. Thank you.
Ray, thank you very much. I appreciate it.